Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Yes, it is Sunday night and it is time for another live stream. Tonight, we're going to be talking a little bit about a controversial subject, and frankly, it's one that I have been putting off, but there are a few things this week that have tipped me over the point of feeling like we probably need to have a chat about this, and this is the review talking about demonstrating drones from a NDAA perspective, but also taking that a step further as well and talking about the militaristic side of things, because the reality is this: there is no getting away from this today. And I also need to clarify my own position as well, but we'll come on to that in a minute. We are going to talk about BetaFPV's sort of beta testing announcements, the new hardware for Artlink, which it is all looking rather interesting. However, I am extremely cautious because right now Artlink is a bit of a disaster. We're going to talk about this because I can talk about it now. There it is, the GX15. We will come on to that in today's video as well. Yes, it's here. I'll answer any questions people may have. I know it's not the radio you were expecting. I did warn you. I did tell people, don't get your hopes up on a Zorro replacement, at least yet. So we're going to talk about that too. And we'll talk about anything else that comes up along the way. Along that period too. So I hope you are all safe and well. It's been a bit of a busy week trying to finish some stuff which will go live this week. I think it's pretty clear what's going on this week, so we'll talk about that. But yeah, I've also just done something rather stupid and amusing at the same time, and I'm going to show you on the overhead. I have just accidentally flashed the SkyZone Artlink BRX module with the HGLRC firmware, and yes, it does take it, unfortunately. Now though, the controls don't work and I don't have firmware from SkyZone, so I have sent SkyZone an email because their website says for the latest firmware for this, please send us an email. So I have just sent them an email asking for the latest firmware. And then I'm going to have to figure out how we flash it. Probably trigger it via a UART. There are some guys who've done quite a bit of digging into this. So I'm hoping they've got a way of me triggering the flash process via a UART. If I can't, I don't know what I'm going to do. But at the moment, it's essentially bricked is the term that I will use. It isn't bricked, but it is essentially bricked because the 5-way joystick doesn't work because HGLRC do it differently. Basically, you've got a bunch of different AIO on here, and there are different ways of doing the controls, and unfortunately, HGLRC are doing it different to SkyZone, although it does boot up and it does show an image, and it does sort of work. It's just that I've literally now flashed it with the wrong firmware. So, boo-hoo, error on me. I literally picked up the wrong one from in front of me. So, yeah, very, very silly. Now, before we get into the main subject, I also do want to touch on something I mentioned last week, actually, and it is around this, which is the DiviMath HD0 Analog VTX. And we had a long discussion last week, and the guys over at HD0 did reach out to me, and they just clarified a point, and I'm not going to get into this too much, but the basics are HD0 haven't created their own IC. There is no new silicon. They are not using the existing way of doing it, but they haven't created their own analog chip. So as a result of that, there is no analog chip HD0 will be selling out into the industry. There is no spreading of this out into the industry. HD0, DiviMath, I should say, because this is a DiviMath product, which is a separate company, parent company, but separate nonetheless. DiviMath have not created a chip. They are doing it a different way, but there is no chip that is going to be sold, and as such, they're selling their product into the market, but don't expect that to widely impact the FPV market as a whole. Don't think, oh, HD0 are going to show loads of people on how to make cheap analog FPV. They're not. The reality is, this is a DiviMath product, and I keep saying HD0, it's DiviMath. I'm going to get slapped around in a minute. It is DiviMath, and it is a DiviMath product, and it will remain a DiviMath product, and that's what it is. So, further to last week's, there's no great new chip on the market like we were sort of talking about. And it's interesting. I did sort of say, when we were looking at it, there were words used that were interesting, and if I click on it, you will see they used the word introduce. It's not using the rich wave chip. The VGX introduces a groundbreaking architecture. That was the hint. It isn't a chip. It's an architecture. Now, it does make sense that DiviMath have come up with a different way of doing this, because Carl has a huge amount of experience, and in fact used to work, I believe, for analog devices. So if anyone knows how to do this without a dedicated chip, it is Carl at DiviMath HD0. So that is one I wanted to get out there. But yeah, we're not going to see any sort of big proliferation of this out into the industry. We're also going to talk a bit about DJI, because there is now moves to further ban DJI and restrict the use of technology being used on drones. This isn't just about the FCC ban. This is actually about restricting certain pieces of technology that is already being used in drones, although there could be a bit of a gotcha here, because this is around the cutoff about technologies that have military applications like LiDAR, and you would say that that would include products like this, although this isn't available in the US, but the Avata 2, some of the other consumer drones have LiDAR on the front. However, this isn't really LiDAR, so we need to sort of talk about that as well. That's more a time of flight sensor than LiDAR. DJI call it LiDAR, but it's not really LiDAR. So there could be some gotchas here. So we need to talk about that too. But now, before I get into the first subject, I am going to be crystal clear. I am going to be talking about a couple of other creators in this next section of the video. However, at no point, and nothing I am saying has any implication on what they are doing, what they are saying. I am not judging them. I am simply using them as a reference, because both of these creators came up on my eye line around this subject for different reasons today. Whatever my personal beliefs are, each creator is entitled to do what they want to do. I am neither being critical, I am neither being supportive. I am simply stating the facts around this, just to be crystal clear. So I don't want this to be, oh my God, Mads Tech has criticised. This isn't about criticism. This is about highlighting and then discussing that. So I'm being clear up front. Now, obviously, I have always had a pretty clear stance on this channel around supporting and reviewing products from companies who, in essence, make drones to kill people. That's the way I've always, militaristic, but more around strike-capable drones. When I highlighted this around Red Cat, Unusual Machines and Rotor Riot, my specific complaint was companies who are, on one hand, promoting products for consumers, teaching kids how to use drones, and on the other hand, promoting the use of strike-capable drones. And I was very clear in those two things. However, we've now entered a world where we are a lot further away from the beginning of this than it was. A lot has changed. Not only do you have the new rules in the US that has now really pushed the development of NDAA products, but the truth and reality here is there basically isn't an FPV company that hasn't been touched by either these bans or war in one way or another. And what is interesting about this is we as creators and people like me stand on this when the truth is the proliferation of this is moved forward massively. And the two people I want to talk about this week is one is JB and one is Botgrinder, because they both posted quite interesting videos of two entirely opposite positions. And what I mean by this is this. JB this week did a overview on Ukraine Flight Drone Simulator. This app is basically teaching people to learn how to fly drones, to blow up objects, potentially kill other vehicles and people. And then on the other side of it, we had Bot, who put out a video this week where he was talking about the fact that he is no longer using HD0 because of the fact of their NDAA products as a result of their parent company. And I just felt this is an incredibly interesting subject where you have two people on very different sides of it. I will openly say, I think JB did a great job in his video of saying what his stance is, why he takes that stance, and why he stands by that. And that is absolutely fine. I'm not here to criticize JB. I'm not saying he's done anything wrong. I'm going to be clear on this. But it is a complete contrast from the likes of Botgrinder, who is literally wrote War Pigs on the front of a set of HD0 goggles. And the truth here is there is no right and wrong. There is no correct and non-correct stance. I do think it's interesting when you start reading the comments from people on this, with JB as an example, taking a very pro-Ukraine stance for his reasoning. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but that was one of JB's very big reasoning. And comments from people saying, if you don't agree with this, then you're anti-Ukraine and things like that. And that isn't necessarily the case. You don't have to want to fly a drone simulator blowing people up, but not support Ukraine. They're not the same thing. Yeah, I don't know. Where do we draw the line? Because, and this is where Botgrinder's video really made me think, is where do we draw the line now? Because things have changed. And it is absolutely correct. Someone says, except for Kiss Ultra, it is absolutely correct that there are many companies who do not support the use of their products for military or war. That is absolutely correct. However, as a reviewer, myself, as a person who talks about this stuff, where do I draw the line? Am I at the point of Bot? Am I at the point of JB? You know, where do you go with this? Because it is becoming incredibly difficult to walk this line now. And the truth is, if you look at JB's video and what that simulator is. It is a simulator teaching people to fly drones for strike capabilities. That's a reality. But how does that differ from Call of Duty, Black Ops? There are hundreds of games that we have become comfortable with, acclimatized with over the past 20 years that many of us have played without even thinking about, well, that guy I've shot is actually a person from another country. GTA is a bit different. GTA is a little bit different. Yeah, we won't go there. But the truth is, there are many games that we've played that you are killing another person. And the reality is, does it have to align to some border dispute, some war, some situation? And that's the difficulty here. And it is a very, very hard line to walk. And it's an interesting question is, as Bot has rightly said, for him, because he can only say what's right for him. I can't comment for Bot. He is not willing to support them because they're making NDAA products. And HD0 is actually a really interesting company to look at here on this, because HD0 and DiviMath, its parent company, and I have to be clear on this, DiviMath is a separate entity to HD0, although they are linked. They make now a range of NDAA compliant products. Now, they are not saying their products are capable of being used in war for killing people or anything like that. They are simply producing products that are NDAA compliant. So, do we sit here and say, well, that's okay? But what Orca, on the other hand, are doing is not. And if you look at Orca are a really well-known name in FPV who are an OG, have provided us lots of nice equipment. But the truth is, they are very involved in major manufacturing expansion based around military applications. I'm not saying Orca have quite gone as far as Red Cat, where Red Cat was literally showing videos of drones with munitions attached to the bottom. That, for me, was the step too far. But it is a line, and I think for me on this subject, and it is a difficult one, but I come back to what I said before is I will not support, promote, or review companies that I see actively promoting the use of drones for killing people. And that, for me, is really the line that I go to. Now, does that mean there isn't a closed room somewhere where Orca are showing their drones with bombs attached? I don't know. I'm not psychic. Does that mean you don't have DiviMath behind closed doors saying, hey, you can use this? Look, we can only go by what the companies say publicly. Companies working in military and defense, I think, is unavoidable now. I genuinely think it is impossible on a global scale to say any company that works in a military application, I don't want to have anything to do with. But that doesn't mean we have to support it when companies are openly promoting or being shown to use drones for killing people. And that is the only line I can take, because I don't feel companies making NDAA products alone means they shouldn't be banned or they shouldn't be talked to or you shouldn't review them. I am more than happy to review NDAA-based goggles or products. It is a market that has existed. It doesn't mean it is being used to kill people. It doesn't mean it can't be used, but you can't blame the knife for the person being stabbed, is the simplest term to use. You can only blame the person wielding it. And that is the reality even of these products, because it doesn't matter if something's NDAA or not. The truth is, they can both be used in a manner that causes harm. And this is a difficult one. And as I've said, I'm just going to say it one more time. I'm not being critical of Bot or JB. I neither agree or disagree with either of them. There is absolutely elements of what I think is interesting. You know, would I have made that video about that game? No. I think if I'm being cynical, and I'm not saying this was the case, I think it was an easy way to get a lot of views, regardless if you agree with it or not. But it also is a very interesting video when you look at it. I wouldn't have made that video, but JB's stance is different to mine, and I respect him for that. Andy RC has just said what was also in my mind there. The fiber optic stuff is wild. I agree. It is incredibly interesting, the fiber optic stuff. I'm swapping between them because I'm not treating anyone differently to the other. I do think the fiber optic stuff, you know, control RC link over fiber optic, video over fiber optic. This stuff is really, really cool. Regardless of the application, it is genuinely really, really cool. And yeah, it's an interesting subject, and it's a tough one. So look, my stance is very simple. There are companies who I would not work with now. So a great example of that is, not that I ever would. Look, they wouldn't want to come to me anyway. But the truth here is Rotor Riot, Red Cat, Unusual Machines. Okay? Not going to happen. Just not going to happen. It would never happen anyway, but just from my side, it's not going to happen. Do I feel HD0 have done anything untoward? No, I absolutely don't. I get what they're doing. Orca, I think, is on that borderline. Is very much on that borderline of, yeah, I think I'd want to look a bit closer today than I looked a few months ago at what they were doing. But nonetheless, what they are doing is serving a purpose as well. And it's not about war for me. It's about how the company behaves. And that's the thing. So I thought it was an interesting subject, and I thought it was a controversial subject, and rather than put it in a dedicated video, I'm going to split this out and send this out, and I am going to catch up on the chat just to see what people think, because it is interesting. For me, you know, someone just said that I think Bot is completely anti-war. I get it. I absolutely... He has the right to believe whatever he wants to believe, just as I have the right to believe whatever I want to believe, and JB does, and others, you know. But I did think it was interesting that we saw this really boil up this week, and I was shocked JB published that video. It's not one I'd have done. Brave man, I'll give him credit for that. And it is interesting. I watched the whole thing. I sat there and thought, yeah, there were elements of it I didn't like. I didn't like the bit where you went after the people in the bush. If he'd have stuck to planes, I'd have been a bit more comfortable. But that's his choice. He's entitled to do what he wants. Andy RC said, we don't want to know how the sausage was made. We just want to eat it. That is a great analogy. Hobby level, isn't that profitable? I bet. Absolutely. And you are Koala FPV, I think it is. You are bang on. A lot of the FPV hobby is being held up by this work. TBS is another great example. Some people will help protect their neighbours and some people will hide in their cellars. Thus, society, broad range of what's important to people. DJI Math goggles is goggles 1. No internal analog. Yes, there was no analog in their products then. Someone asked, is the analog encrypted? Not that I'm aware. I'm not aware it's encrypted. Unless I've missed something. I don't have it, but I don't believe the analog is encrypted. I thought it could be used with any. I'm not seeing encryption here. Video input format. It's NDAA compliant, but I don't believe it's encrypted. Question here from BB King FPV. Here's a question. What about if the shoe was on the other foot and the UK manufacturer supplied drones parts to defend our country? Yeah, look, I think we will all change our tune when the bullets are flying over our own heads. And this room would probably turn into quite the factory. That's the reality. Tech Giant X, I do understand, but why don't we stop entering Boeing planes? I don't particularly like getting on a Boeing unless I have to. I prefer, I don't like Boeings based on a lot of history, but that's not really to do with that. But yeah, they advertise their military aircraft. You're right. And I think a really good point in this is FPV really came from a place of a niche, tight-knit community, and we don't like seeing that being used for other things. Fly High FPV said it was a good way to get a lot of views. So many people tune out of JB. I don't know. Look, I think people do. Is it a controversial video? Yes. Does that kind of video... Look, I think it's fairly clear JB has spent a lot of time in recent times doing a lot more NDAA. Maybe, I don't know what he's doing, but NDAA and more type of stuff. The US drone laws changed. Is it hard to imagine that JB is being involved with stuff with businesses and companies? Of course. JB's a very talented man and he's going to do what he does. It's not cool when you juicy flick a fiber drone and it loses video. Me trying the fiber. Well, converters for composites, serial audio were always out there. I used many times in broadcast, so nothing new. The drum idea is new, though. Yeah. Fiber optic on drones is like Spider-Man in real world. Yeah, and if you've seen the webs, of course, Ukraine is crazy. So, look. That's it. I don't want this to go on forever. I felt, having watched both those videos this week, because I think, look, people do forget this. I am a person who watches a lot of content. I enjoy YouTube content. The great thing about YouTube, and I've said this to so many people, I get people whinge about my videos, and I am just blunt now, and I basically tell them to F off and go watch something else. I don't force anyone to watch. And someone then replies with, yeah, but if we don't watch, you don't get any money. And I just go, I don't care. I don't care if you watch. I didn't ask you to, I don't force you to watch. If you want to watch and you like the content, great. If you don't, bugger off. If I don't get any money, I'm not in this for money, so I don't care. Bugger off. It's, yeah. No one is Leisure FPV. I'm not saying if they're needed or not. That's a different argument. Does it mean... And look, I think all of our concerns are less about Ukraine and more about what will happen elsewhere. Chris Leave, yeah, you say Call of Duty, that's what I said. I've said it. More people need to follow the FPV Freedom Coalition. I don't really know a lot about it. It's obviously US based. I think Blunty's involved. Go check it out for yourself. But yeah, so look, I thought it was an interesting subject. My stance is very simple. I am more than happy to review products from the likes of HT0, even Orca and others. What I will do is monitor how a company behaves, and if I feel a company falls below the standard I personally hold, then I will make a decision based on that. NDAA alone is not a reason not to work with, review, talk about a product. For me, it will have to be, really more than anything, actively promoting the use of drones to kill people, regardless of where it is. And I know that might not be popular, but nonetheless, doesn't matter where it is, especially FPV drones. So, it's as simple as that. Okay, so now I've managed to get through that without getting... Am I cancelled yet? Right. Let me clear some of these windows. So, someone asked earlier, I'm not aware this is encrypted. As far as I'm aware, it's just an analog transmitter. I will get one. I'm not 100% clear if the guys are going to send me one or not. JB was clearly sent one early. But I will talk about it when it comes. Or I'll just order one, because it's an at the end of the day, it's an analog transmitter. Whether it's NDAA, not NDE, NDAA compliant or not, it's irrelevant. It is an analog transmitter, and as such, it's interesting for the community, even as a whole. It's fairly cheap. It's a big boy. I saw this image on JB's Discord. Let me just show you guys this. It is a big boy when you see it. She ain't small, is the term I'll use. And I nicked this image from JB's Discord, because I am a Patreon of JB's. Just so I can steal images, obviously. Not for any other reason. It's not like I make my own content. I just go around stealing his. No, but I saw this picture, which I thought was quite interesting, because it sort of shows the scale of it. That's it, obviously, next to a Unify Pro 32. She's big. That's a fair size when you look at it. And I don't know if there's camera angle at play there, but yeah, that's... She ain't small. I wish HT0 would now use MMCX connectors. Yeah, we could do with the Freestyle version 3 now, couldn't we, really? Very interesting, though. But yeah, not small. For the heatsink, there is a heatsink kit for it. For those who don't know, there's a heatsink kit which bolts on the top there, look, to keep it cool, which you can buy for $20. So it screws in there for the fan mountings. So that's it there. Right. Before moving forward, Harold Dedicated, thank you for the €11.99. I really appreciate that. Hopefully you'll have a nice bit of technical content coming this week. Maybe on something from Cadex. But thank you. I really, really appreciate that. That's amazing. Old school copper trace design. Designs me of an old Motorola. Yeah, it does. It's really cool. And as I said, that HC0, it's not a new chip. You're amazing. Thank you, my friend. I really do appreciate it. Right. The next thing we need to talk about is DJI, because there is more trouble coming, and that is that the US government is now trying to find other ways of limiting the use of drones in the US, and that is specifically around this, because in December they put the FCC ban in place, but now the FCC is seeking public comment on whether to prohibit future imports and sales of certain foreign-made drones already cleared in the US. And this is basically the stuff that's already FCC certified. So, to catch you up, the ban in December was on any products being FCC certified in the future. Existing products were not affected. This is now the second step, which is to move towards putting restrictions on existing certified products. And although the proposal is aimed at targeting military-grade drones, their definition includes drones which include things such as thermal imaging and LiDAR capabilities, docking stations or other products widely used by first responders, infrastructure inspectors, small businesses and hobbyists. And it certainly is a move to potentially restrict other drones, and as someone has just said, the Neo 2. So if we talk about LiDAR, there are a number of DJI's drones that have LiDAR sensors on the front, but we have to be careful here on terms. Technically, they're LiDAR, but technically they're not. These drones, I would actually class as featuring a time-of-flight sensor and not a LiDAR. Now, a time-of-flight sensor is still a LiDAR, but it's a different kind of measurement sensor. And as an example, what I mean is this. If we look on this DJI Avata 360, the Avata 360, although not certified in the US, has front-facing LiDAR sensors. You also have the downward-facing LiDAR sensor. However, this is deemed as a time-of-flight sensor, but it is basically the same as what we have here. So, whilst these may be classed as LiDAR, they are in essence time-of-flight sensors, is what they are. So, whether these kind of sensors would be deemed as LiDAR remains to be seen. It isn't clear. They are high-power laser diode devices, but they are certainly not forward-facing mapping LiDAR. For these things to do forward-facing mapping, they would need to actually move and rotate. If you look at a proper LiDAR sensor, they actually rotate. If we search for a drone LiDAR sensor, see, look, these are optical and LiDAR sensors, but these are not the rotating ones. The real ones are, you know, if you look at these are all really time of flight. They're not rotating LiDAR sensors like you see on some of the other ones. So if we go on 3DXR, Ben will probably have the proper ones here. So look, TF Lunar Micro LiDAR, these are really range-finding sensors. These, again, are big range-finding sensors. And then you've got the rotating ones, which are here. So if you look at this, scanning LiDAR is really the proper style LiDAR sensor where it's ping, 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 ping. You know, even if we look at these big ones here, right? This Bakeway LiDAR sensor, 180 meters range. It is in essence a range finding sensor. And it doesn't say, it says LiDAR, and people do use these for 3D mapping, but these are in essence rangefinders. Some 3D printer scanners, yeah. But look, so there is certainly a new move to put restrictions. And if we start thinking about the products this could affect, it will be anything that technically has a LiDAR sensor. So as you say, the Neo 2, the A3, I think, the A3S. A number of different products use these. So there is a risk here. Now, by this definition, the good news is DJI FPV would not be affected. However, you do need to be careful here, because when they start talking about things like military grade, frankly, it is arguable that OcuSync is a military grade wireless video technology, because there's bugger all else that comes close. And could the definition military grade be applied to OcuSync? I don't think it's a big stretch if you said high definition long range video systems that offer command and control over long distances. You get into dodgy waters, and it isn't beyond the realms of possibility that this could stretch into those kind of areas too. So, look, we're going to have to wait and see. The truth is, we just don't know. We just don't know. Worrying, though. So, look, DJI is battling for its life. There's no denying it. But it's not just DJI. And look, guys, taking DJI out of this, everyone is affected here. If this crap hits DJI, it's going to hit Cadex, it's going to hit... There ain't anything in FPV that basically isn't made in China. And what applies to DJI technically applies to all. You know, here's another example. Cadex can't replace Avatar HD because it won't get FCC certified. They can't. You know, hell, Ascent. I'm not even sure how Ascent exists. Probably isn't FCC certified. Oh, there is an FCC number on the back of the box. Yeah, I saw the new tariffs. Let me just read this. 2BHG9. 2BHG9. Hyphen. WN 13 hyphen 4509B. Does this actually exist? Because I tell you what I did find interesting. I really struggled. 2BH9. That's Cadex's FCC ID. Okay. Ah, so here we go. Ascent VRX. So there is There is a report for the Ascent VRX. But here's what I don't know is how Cadex are going to do it moving forward. Ascent GT Pro. How did that get certified? 26th of the 3rd, 2026. How did they get them certified? That shouldn't have happened. Coveted equipment classifications and assertion letter. So they're not on the coveted list, is what they're saying. Or covered list. I don't know how that made it through. Intriguing. Did I see the new tariffs? Yes. Right. Oh, Kevin. Thank you for the £20 super chat. Right. I'll answer your question in a minute. Let me finish this and I'll come back to you. The US Gov will be block legit US manufacturers if they're not owned by the family. Yeah, it's going to happen. Money in the pockets. Exactly. Dollars. Someone's knees got a little dirty. Did I miss the new VRX module from BetaFPV? No, we haven't talked about BetaFPV yet. You don't get to know. Well played. Yeah. We're going to have to wait and see. Not good news. But it's going to be intriguing. I just want to look at something. I can't show you, but I want to look at something. Yeah. That's got a different FCC ID on it as well. How are Cadex getting drone products certified? I don't know how that's possible. The ban is on foreign-made drone components. How is that happening? I don't understand how that's happening. The ban isn't on DJI. The ban is on foreign-made drone components. Missing something here. Yeah, it's... Do you know, Harold, you may have nailed something. Anyone noticed all of Cadex's advertising is for cars? I fucking wonder. Have they said what this is for? I'm intrigued. I am really intrigued, and I need to spend some time reading. As a US agent... Authorization. I need to... No, I don't think it's the Fat Shark thing. There's something we're missing here. There is something afoot. I'm just looking at the report, right? And at the report, they usually say what the product is for. Okay? So this is for the GT Pro. Just trying to see if there's any comments on what it is. There's usually like a little statement in the FCC report. I haven't seen it because it usually describes the product. This is the testing. There's usually like a description of the product. Model. Engineering sample. Radar emissions. There's nothing. Weird, weird, weird. Weird, weird, weird. They're saying it's not covered equipment. What is this? This person in the US agent designation for service of process certification and anyone know what that means? So it's not, Cadex is not in the covered list. I'm intrigued. I am intrigued. How are Cadex doing this? And it's not just Cadex. This will apply to everyone. But Cadex is the key. Okay. So, anyway. Enough of that. Oh, thank you, Nutrix. $4.99. I appreciate it. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about BetaFPV and some new hardware that's coming. So, this week, BetaFPV have started a test. Bit weird. Didn't know they were going to do this. I don't have these products. I haven't been offered these products. I don't know if I'll be getting these products. I can't answer that question. They've not asked me. We're going to have to wait and see. We'll come on to the DJI drone in a minute. I'll do the DJI drone at the end when I go over the app and stuff, because I'll do that as the talking section. So, This week, they've announced their test for a VRX standard module. So this is for the Artlink system. Supports up to a mere 60 frames a second at 1080p. Mini HDMI. Well, hey, someone making a VRX module adds mini HDMI. Who would have thought? Maximum 1TB SD card. BetaFPV's equivalent of the many VRX modules that are available for Artlink, that none of them work properly, so let's hope this one does. But yeah, so they're going to have that. Don't really know about the design. I don't know what it is about all of these bloody companies making VRX modules. Tell me what goggle that's going to be good for. Now, yes, I know we're going to come on to a module for a goggle in a minute, but that goggle doesn't have a module bay. The HD0 goggle doesn't have a bloody module bay. So, look, I'm not sure. I just feel goggle module manufacturers are doing, these are ground stations, not modules. But look, it looks interesting. I hope it works properly. Good news. Alongside that, there is then a monitor. Now, this is a bit more interesting because we've not really seen any sharing functionality in Artlink yet. This implies that you're going to be able to share your video feed. Artlink is a two-way system, just like DJI FPV, just like Avatar. Sharing has always been quite interesting, is the term I will use. And for those who haven't seen my video, I do have a video on sharing with Avatar HD. For those who don't know, let me just find you this. So you can see this one for yourselves, because yeah, it's, let's just say it isn't the best thing in the world. The sharing functionality on many of these products. Let me just go to here and find you this a second. So it's going to have to take the feed straight in, is my understanding, is what it's going to do. Let me just find... I did have a video on this, but I just don't know what channel it's on. Is it on this channel? No, it must be on my channel. Okay. Let me just try and find it. I don't know where this video is. I certainly know how to find it. Visibility. Unlisted, private. It'll be one of those videos. And you need to see this, because this is the share function on Avatar HD. If you haven't seen it. And it works particularly well, is the term I will use. It's one of my favourite videos I've ever made, in fact. Should have had this ready, really. How long ago did I make this? This will be a while ago. Give me a second. Work with me. I wish I could remember what it was called. Is it that far back? It can't be that far back. No, it's definitely not that far back. I can't find it. Can't find it. Here we go. Found it. This isn't the short video, but this is the full size one. So let me show you the footage. Let me show you this. So this is the kind of thing you would get on Avatar HD in share mode. Because this is what happens when you don't have all of the packets. So I don't know how they're going to do this, but they also need to figure out a way of it not turning into this. And I have a really amusing video on this. Yeah, so let's hope it works better than that. Let's see that. Yeah, it really was like that at times. Look at the sky, look. Woohoo! So let me just get back to Instagram. The monitor is interesting, but we're going to have to wait and see how this works. Is it going to be just a bind only and only that works, or is it going to be a proper share mode? It isn't clear. They do say it's available to make your P1 images more accessible to your friends. So that the FPV monitor features a display paired perfectly with the P1 VTX, versatile all-in-one. So that implies to me it works on its own. But we're going to have to wait and see. It isn't clear. Or is there a bit more to this than meets the eye? We then also have this, which is the biggie. And frankly, this is the most interesting part of the whole thing, which is the Matrix Brushless 1S flight controller, which is an AIO with the P1 VTX built in. This is the #1 interesting thing in all of it, because this is going to mean Artlink can move into a full AIO setup without having to have another board, bringing the weight down only 4.6 grams, which is incredibly interesting. But it is only interesting as long as it actually works and it delivers, because the current BetaFPV firmware is junk and doesn't work at all. It just doesn't behave. I hope they fixed it. I am a little concerned because I spotted something today and I've just messaged BetaFPV about this. Today, the firmware available for the P1 and the firmware available for the P1 and the goggles, which is the VRO one, is it? I think it is. That firmware is 2.06. However, the firmware for these new modules is 2.08. There is no 2.06 available for the P1 or the VRO1 HD goggles, which means, have they fixed anything? And I've asked BetaFPV, is there new firmware for the P1? Because the current firmware is terrible. It doesn't work properly. They have completely broke Artlink since releasing the compatible firmware for the other systems. It was fine on the 1.0 release, total junk on the 2.0 series. So since they've added compatibility, it just doesn't work. Alongside this, there is then also the VRX Nano modules. So let me just go under this. They've hidden this. It isn't on Instagram. Let me just find it. There's a, where they say, where is this beta test section? Here we go. And then they've also got, alongside the Matrix, we've got this VRX module. However, there is a lot of confusion here on this, which is called the P1 HDVRX Nano. And there are two versions. There's a Fat Shark and a Sky Zone version, which looks to be the same, just an external casing. Now, people need to understand, this does not give analog output of the digital signal. This can only be used with goggles that have a HDMI input. It still requires HDMI input. This isn't converting it to analog for all goggles. It is a bay-based module, but it is still a HDMI output, which you need HDMI to connect to your goggles, like that connector there. Alongside this, it also doesn't have power from the bay for all goggles. It depends on the goggles type. Some goggles can power this from the bay, some cannot. It isn't crystal clear which one can. So if your goggle has HDMI input, this should work, and it says up to 1080p 60 frames a second. But all it is really doing is giving you a tidier VRX module setup. So instead of having this thing bolted on a stand or something like that, this will somewhat fit into the module bay and make it a bit tidier. That will not help you if you're using Cadex Goggles X. It will not help you really if you're using the HD0 goggles. You may as well just put a module on the front. But it is a different setup. But people have to understand it is still HDMI. Still HDMI. They're saying it's going to be under $80. Yeah, the pricing here is $74.99, which is interesting. Fat Shark and Sky Zone versions. It's interesting, but it really doesn't solve a lot of issues. If we look on the AIO, they're saying the AIO is going to be $70, $69.99. It certainly looks interesting. The one big problem, though, this faces is Cadex are marching ahead. Ascent is getting better and better. Ascent has its VRX, it has its goggles, it has the Ascent Lite VTX. We know the Ascent Lite Plus is around the corner. There is, and Ascent offers a lot more capability now. This doesn't even work properly. You know, right now, I can't recommend you buy any of this because the current firmware doesn't work properly. You can download the P1 and the goggles to version 1 firmware and it's fine. But none of this new gear has version 1 firmware. They all have version 2.8, which means you can't downgrade, and if version 2.8 doesn't work properly, then it's a complete waste of time. And this is the problem right now. We don't have confirmed working firmware for these products. Therefore, I can't actually recommend you buy them because the last firmware they released doesn't work properly. Now, tonight I have reflashed my Artlink stuff, and tomorrow I am going to go and refly my Artlink stuff just to catch up to where it is compared to Ascent, because it's been a little while. It has been a little while. But unless they fix the firmware, this is just... As nice as this is, I can't recommend you buy this. Right now, I don't recommend anyone buys any of this. Don't go near this a minute, because it doesn't work properly from what we've seen on the current firmware. And again, I can recommend Artlink on this and this today, right? I can recommend these two because you can downgrade to version 1 firmware. There's version 1 firmware for these goggles, and there's version 1 firmware for this VTX. There isn't version 1 firmware for this new VRX module. There isn't version 1 firmware for the AIO. So if this new firmware for these, and bearing in mind, as I've said already, they've only released firmware for these, because this is where it gets completely messy. If you go on here, right, and you go, right, firmware. Okay. Firmware for the P1 HD VRX Nano. And then on BetaFPV we go, oh, we want firmware for the AIO. So let's get the firmware for the AIO as well. Where is it? That's Blue Jay. Have I missed the link for the Artlink firmware? It's the receiver. Have they even published the firmware for this? I don't know if they have. Okay, I'm not seeing it, but if I now go to FPV gear, P1 ear unit, we go to the download sections for the ear unit, and we go, right, I want the latest firmware for the P1. Firmware for the P1. So, the latest firmware for the P1 is 3 months old, 29th of the 4th, 2026, and it is version 2.06. And the latest firmware for this VRX module, P1 HD VRX Nano, is the 5th of the 6th, 2026, version 2.08. So we've already got a firmware mismatch between the VRX module and the P1 ear unit. And there is no new firmware for the P1 ear unit. Now, what we don't know is the problem in the ear unit firmware or the goggle side firmware. Perhaps this 2.08 fixes the problems that were introduced with version 2, but it isn't available for this. So, this is all a real mess. A real mess right now. And whilst it is very, very interesting, unless they fix this shit, I won't recommend it. Because if this doesn't work, what are we meant to do? It's no good selling stuff that doesn't work properly. It's just a disaster. And this all was introduced with a migration to the firmware that worked with all of the systems. And that was the problem. So, look, that's where we are with Artlink. Interesting. Very interesting. But interesting doesn't get past the fact that it actually needs to work. And that's the problem we're at today. Because I've seen no evidence it works properly. And look, I don't know how many here in the chat have Artlink and are using the current firmware. Here's a question. Are you using Artlink on version 2 firmware and are you happy with it? Because when I flew version 2, I was like, oh my God, what have they done? All of the people on my Discord with it who had it went, oh my God, this is a disaster. I'm going back to version 1 and version 1 is fine. So I'm intrigued. What, is there anyone here flying Artlink happy on version 2, BO5, BO4, BO3? You let me know, because right now it's just a crap show. So, that's what we have. We're going to have to wait and see where the firmware lands. Okay. New Tricks, thank you for the super chat. Right, Kevin Broadley, 5422. So you've got. I have an old DJI Mavic Pro. I have a Mavic 2. So you need the DJI Fly app. No, sorry, you need the DJI Pilot app for the Mavic Pro. Sorry, I'm getting back. Now, I think you said you had an S23. I think you're going to struggle on the S23. The DJI... I'm sure the DJI Pilot app is what is used on the Mavic Pro. Let me just double check. Might be the early versions of DJI Fly. It could be the early versions of Fly. So let's have a look what DJI is saying. No, it's Go 4. Wow. Fucking hell. Okay. It is Go 4. Okay. You can still get DJI Go, but how it works on your phone, I don't know. You may have to pick quite an old Android device to even use it. DJI, is this available to download? Can I even install this on my S24? Yeah, Pilot app is on the Mavic 2. But you can also... Will this even install? Of course, going back now. Ascent is definitely moving forward. So, I'm just downloading DJI Go 4 and let's see if I can install it on my S24 Ultra. Although I'm not running the latest version of Android. I've got an S24 Ultra with a stupid issue that it's from the wrong country and it won't update in the UK without me reflashing the phone or changing the frickin' IDs, which I can't be bothered to do. Why they make it so complicated, I don't know. Right, so if we go to the overhead, do I want to install DJI Go 4? Will it install? You got it on an iPhone 16. Unsafe app is blocked. Bugger off. Install anyway. Yes, yes, yes. DJI are going to steal all of my data. How dirty my screen is. Does it open? I agree. Steal all my data. Yes, 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 yes. No. Huh? It runs. You might be alright. So you just need to go and download DJI Go 4. Weird. Man, it looks okay. Go download DJI Go 4. And so go download DJI Go 4, install it on your phone. If it's installed on mine, you should be fine on an S23. Do I miss the iPhone? It's an interesting question. I do keep finding myself looking at a 17 Pro Max. Half the reason I haven't actually dived in is they're never in stock. No one seems to have stock of them apart from Apple, and I do miss the iPhone. I love my Samsung S24 Ultra. Genuinely. I genuinely love... Yeah, I know. I would wait. You are right. Wait for the 18 Pro Max. Yeah. This is probably... I would rate this equally to my 13 Pro Max, which I swapped from. So for those who are not here regularly, I had a 13 Pro Max, which I loved. I bought the 15 Pro Max. No, the 16 Pro Max, and it's the first iPhone I sent back because I just didn't feel it was a big enough upgrade. And then I decided I'd never had a true Android experience. I'd used lots of cheaper Android phones, but I had never bought an Android phone myself. I'd used a lot with various work and things like this, but they were always the shit end of Android. So I thought, if I'm going to experience Android, I wanted to experience it in the best possible way, and the best phone at the time was the S24 Ultra, so I bought an S24 Ultra. Because that was the best at the time. So what are we now? 2 years? 2 years? Genuinely, I love this phone. Genuinely, I do love this phone. And it isn't because I love Android. To be honest, I could do without Android. There are bits of Android that piss me off no end. There are various apps that don't work properly, that should work properly. There are lots of elements that do piss me off, but there are 3 things about this phone that are great. Number 1, I do love the size of the screen. I like a big phone. I love the quality of the audio from this phone. When watching a video, it is a great audio output. It really, really is. And I do like the cameras. The cameras on this. And here's another real point. As a content creator, the microphone audio recording on the S24 wipes the floor with an iPhone. Every iPhone I've tried. The audio on the video recording wipes the floor with Apple. I don't need to use an external mic with this. I can, but I don't need to. I can hold this there and film something, and the audio is absolutely usable. It's fine. It's no problem at all. As a media phone, I found the cameras on this better than the iPhone. I was a bit disappointed in the iPhone from the cameras. It's a great phone. I find myself wanting to swap. I'd like to go back to Apple to try again, but there are a couple of little things that I love. Do you know what the one thing that's holding me back? Why can you still not do split screen on a Pro Max iPhone? I love the split screen feature on this. I only use it probably 4 or 5 times a year, but when I need it, it's there. Why can't you have the split screen feature on an iPhone? And if you don't know what it is, I can literally use both. I was an iPhone user since I imported my first iPhone into the UK before they were sold here. I had an iPhone in the UK before 99% of people, because I imported the iPhone in and had it hacked to use in the UK. I had every iPhone up until my 13 Pro Max. I had every generation up until the 13 Pro Max. I have been an Apple man through and through, but I felt it was time to do something different. And I don't regret the S24 Ultra. There are elements of it that are a little bit more painful, but there are elements that are better. Yeah, I used to jailbreak. You know, for those who've been around Apple stuff for a long time, Darling Fireball, all of those very early Mac websites. I even had an early Mac website. Yeah, I don't... And look, I do miss, like, I use the AirPods because the AirPods are great. But they're a pain in the ass to use on Android. I do miss the Mac integration, but I don't edit on a Mac anymore. If I edited on a Mac now, I would probably still be on an iPhone. Because I edit on a PC, it's different. Cydia was neat, yeah. Yeah, look, look, I was iPhones all my life. I still have my 17 Pro Max. I use it for work, so I still use an iPhone. I do actually still use an iPhone daily, but I don't use it for personal use daily. You know, look, I was a very early adopter of smartphones. My first smartphone, Sony P990i, probably my first smartphone. I had a few before that. I had a Sony P990i. I remember Symbian on the Nokia N93. N95. I had the Nokia N95, obviously. Palm Pilot, yeah. I was a very, very... I loved the Sony P990. I loved that phone. They don't make phones like that anymore. You know. This is a phone. This was a phone. What? Is that how much they're going for? Fucking hell. What a phone this was. What a phone. Wish I'd have kept it. Do you know one of my favourite phones was the Nokia 8210? Anyone remember the Nokia 8210? How small the 8210 was. For those who don't know, the 8210 was like that tall. Great little phone. And do you know what the 8210's party trick is? If you put it on the table and phoned it, it would spin in a circle. When it vibrated, it would vibrate and spin around. That was his party piece. Such a great little phone. And the front comes off. You could replace the front panels. They don't make phones like that anymore. Yeah, like I was... Yeah, I have an 8210 here somewhere. I have one in here somewhere. I don't know where it is. No, not the 77. Say, Gem. And you could pull the battery. Yeah, phone that small and you could take the battery out. Who'd have thought? You listening, Apple? And then I had the Motorola StarTAC. At some point, for anyone who remembers the Motorola StarTAC, you could flip it up. It was a flip phone. You were the bulls if you had one of them, because it had a big battery on the top. You were a baller if you had one of these. Talking about ballers. You were absolutely a baller if you had one of these phones. I loved this phone. This had one of these. Had the flat battery, and then you had the bigger battery if you needed it there like that. As you can see, look, you've got the higher capacity, the smaller capacity, and the higher capacity. And the antenna would pop up, and it would flip up. And you were a baller because you would be walking around, your phone would ring out your pocket, and the game was you'd be pulling it out, your thumb would go into the gap, flip it up, and you'd be going, hello? God, I feel old at times. But it's interesting. I've been here. I'm at the age where I've been here for the revolution technology. Yeah, I had a BlackBerry. Wasn't a big BlackBerry fan. Yeah, to get you through the day, 2 extra batteries. Yeah. But you would be... Because it made you feel like you were on Star Trek. And that's why you loved the StarTAC, because it made you feel like you were Captain Kirk. Come on, let's not hide from it. The truth is, you'd be able to go... Yes, That's what it was. That's why you did it. We all know why we had one. That's the reason. But yeah, just... I think my Sony P990i was my favorite smartphone. And yeah, look, I will end up back at Apple. I will be honest, I will end up back at Apple. The truth here is Samsung have let me down with the new S26. Don't like it. S25, meh. S26, I don't like this new screen. I like the idea of the privacy feature, but I haven't tried one. Does anyone here, or has anyone here upgraded from an S23, S24 to the S26 with the new privacy screen? Are you seeing the drop in resolution? Because people don't realize there's actually a drop in resolution on that screen because of the way they're doing the funky privacy thing. How do you find the screen? I've seen mixed reports on the S26. Yeah, well, the Nokia N95 slid up. If you remember, the N95 was a phone that slid. Oppo X9 Ultra. Went from S22 to the Honor Magic V6. Yeah, been looking at some of the Chinese ones. I tell you what I am holding back on is the rumours that Apple are going to do a folding phone. Because here's the truth. Apple are probably the only company who can do a folding phone properly. Because if you read any good review or long-term user of the Galaxy Fold, there are too many apps that don't work properly, including bloody YouTube. How can bloody YouTube not work properly on a folding phone? How from Android? How can that be allowed to happen? But there is rumours of Apple doing a fold. And let's be honest, if anyone can do a fold better than anyone else, it's Apple, because they will force the screen resolution capability properly, because Apple have tight control over the system. And that is the benefit Apple have because of being in complete control. The new Honor Robot phone is the next phone I want. Yeah, look, I've been looking at like some of the Chinese ones, the Oppo, the Honors. There's some pretty decent phones there. Yeah, someone said the Apple phone will be the same as the Squat one. Yeah, the new... Yeah, I was a bit disappointed in what Samsung have done. You know, if we go mobile, like, fuck. Bit disappointing overall. That is not what I was expecting. The Z Fold 8. Nah, it's not for me. Job puts me off with the pixels. The hardware is shit. That's the only thing that puts me off with a Pixel. Anything you really read on a Pixel is the hardware is not great. The phone physically. Spawn on widescreen life. We'll come back to FPV in a minute. I am disappointed in the S26 Ultra. I'd go probably back to an iPhone before that. I found the pixels to be fine in use. Okay, that's interesting. 1 watt ELRS legit, Drake FPV or Sunsky Max mad. I don't... Drake FPV or Sky Guy Max. I don't really know either of those brands. Right. Now we got on to phones. We need to get back to FPV. And the last thing we need to talk about... It did release this week, didn't it? Just make sure I'm not fucking breaking an NDA here. Yes, it is this. Yes, it is the GX15. Definitely launched this week, didn't it? Yeah. So, yes, this is as he goes to his channel. Oh, no. Bardwell's got a video. We're all right. Yes, a very interesting radio for some. I actually really like it overall. I would actually choose this as a daily driver if it wasn't for the 250 milliwatts Express ELRS. That, for me, is the only reason I wouldn't choose this as a daily. I understand what Radiomaster are doing with this. You know, the market for this radio is plain wing. That is the market. The market here is for heli wing, a one for all. I would like to have seen them give you the option, and I would like Radiomaster to consider now offering RF module options on their radios, because I think if you could have this with a 1 watt LR1121 module, I'd be a very happy man. I tell you what I am surprised at, and we haven't seen this yet, why we haven't had... Look, there is a new chip coming that's going to offer the best of everything. However, why haven't we seen a module with one SX1281 and one LR1121, giving you the best of both worlds? That would be cool as well. But look, overall, it is a nice radio. I prefer the older carbon look. This is a very shiny carbon on this. I do prefer the older carbon style over this, notwithstanding that this isn't a very nice looking radio. But it's a bit more blingy than the other carbon. That's for sure. Great layout, though, and I do like the screen up top. Someone said, do I know anything about the Zorro 2? If I did, I wouldn't be able to talk about it because I'd be under NDA, but I don't know a single thing. Not a single thing. And that tells you I don't, because I wouldn't be able to say that if I did. I don't know if it's ever coming. I can't comment. Buttons are okay. Yeah, look, they are a stretch. You know, that is a stretch. That isn't sort of the you are stretching across. Yeah, I do like this rotary wheel. Sliders on the back. Yeah. On the back corners. Here you have sliders. Dual SX1281s up to 250 milliwatts of RF power. Look, you can put a module bay in the back. But look, it is a very nice radio. I could daily drive this quite easily, being honest. Do you find the sliders a bit spiky? I can feel it in my fingers. I'm just moving it there. It's... I will say the lever could do with being a little bit longer. I get why it isn't, because you can actually put your fingers over the top and not really feel it. But yeah, they're definitely going after some of that Spectrum money. Look, it is a nice radio, and as I said, I could quite happily daily drive this if it wasn't for the fact of 250. Although I never fly above 25 milliwatts in the UK anyway. So perhaps I will daily drive it. But you could put a Nomad in the back. You could modify it and try and put a Nomad inside. I think about the only thing I would say is I would like to see Radiomaster start to offer maybe module options on their radios. I know it makes things a bit complicated, but I think I believe we're at the stage where radios could easily have... Radiomaster could just have one type of module that they can swap out in their radios. And then you, the user, can pick the one with the module you want. Don't get me wrong, that makes it complicated from a certification standard. It does have an SD card slot as well. The memory's on the board, but there is an SD card slot under in the battery bay. Wrong one. There you go. You've got an empty SD card slot there. The UI is the same. It's Edge TX. The UI is no different. It's Edge TX. It's the latest versions of Edge TX, but it's Edge TX nonetheless. It's still your normal Edge TX. It's not customized for this radio. It is the same Edge TX as you always have. So you've got your button menu, which takes you into this. This is the normal Edge TX newer menu system. It's the newer versions, but yeah, it's all there. And look, it is a bit clunky, the new Edge TX. Like if you go into radio settings, I don't know about Radiomaster greasing. I always have like a little pot of grease which I put on all my gimbals. It's something I'll mention to them. Yeah, it's the typical Edge TX. The screen does go very bright as well. Just to give you an idea, this backlight is turned right down. You know, it does go very, very bright. I have to turn it down for the review because you won't see it. I do like a top-mounted screen. To be fair, I do like a top-mounted screen. Yeah, it is a very nice radio. When you look at the colours, if we go to radios and then we go to the GX15, Radiomaster have a bunch of different colours of batteries flat on that. You've got the carbon fibres. And what's interesting, that carbon fibre looks better there than it does in person. Yeah, you can change the volume. That carbon fibre looks nicer there than this does in person. It doesn't look so fake carbony. I do think there's some bloody nice colours on this as well. That is a great colour for the Max. That black. 2 weeks. Mr. Martin Rome, 2 weeks. That is a great colour. I like that. But you got the black, the blue. I'd like to see that with the other colours.
You can explore different colour options
Amazon.
for many products
Cancel.
on Amazon.
What?
Simply adjust the colour
Hey!
selection when
Alexa!
viewing the product deep.
Shut up. And they say they're not listening all of the time. And then you've got the 15 colours. Be interesting to see when they... God, that green is green. Not sure about the red. Not sure about the yellow. Blue. Maybe the white. Do like the green now. I'll be tempted to order one of those shells when the parts become available. They take a while, but I'll be tempted to order one of those shells and do a shell swap. Keep the colours of the buttons are lovely, but just do a shell swap on that colour. It looks a little less tame there than it does in person. It's not that I dislike it, because I don't. It's not that I completely dislike it, but I did prefer the older carbon fiber weave look. It just feels this is a more fake looking carbon. You know, if you go to the TX15, where's my 50? It's down here. I'm don't get me wrong, they're all fake. But I do prefer that older colour. Carbon. It's not even old. That's a new radio. That's my go-to. So, yeah. A nice entry from Radiomaster. Much nicer. I agree. Good radio, though. Very interesting to watch the reviews. It's a different weave of carbon as well. Smaller weave on the other radios. Very interesting, though, to watch the reviews. Just turn my aircon off. You know, I installed aircon in here. It's the best thing I've ever done. Honestly. The best thing I've ever done. What's the difference in output of the GX and TX? So the GX15 is 250 milliwatts dual SX1280. The TX15 is a single LR1121 up to 1 watt. So the TX15 does not support FLRC, whereas this does. Different radios, though. I do wonder, there's got to be a point where all of these modules don't make sense. I almost wonder how long we get to a point of just going, make everything up to 1 watt, right? Just make everything up to 1 watt. There is a new chipset coming. It won't be long before there will be one chipset that does it all. Remember, today there's no FLRC on the LR1121. That is the problem. If you want F1000, you have to have the SX128 series. We're waiting for the one to rule them all. There can be only one. It's one ring to rule them all, but yeah, we are waiting on the new Semtech chipset, which will give the best of everything, in essence. I'm trying to remember what it's called. Does anyone know the number? I can't remember it off the top of my head. It's not the LR1121. Let's have a look. It is... It's not totally true yet. Vision 4 has K1. Yeah, there we go. The LR2021. It's not totally true. Vision 4 has K1000 for both, but so it's FLRC, whereas I'm right on not. I said F1000 because it's FLRC 1000, which it is F1000 because that's FLRC, but you're gaining K1000. It's not that you can't have faster speeds, you're just having different modulations. But I guess when we get to the new chip, this nonsense goes away. I do wonder, Wes, you might be able to answer, and Captain Bry, as we have the gentlemen here, those devs from the Express LRS. What have those devs for the Express LRS team ever done for us? That's what I say. What have those guys ever done for you and me in FPV? I don't know. So the least they can do is answer a question. Why don't we see modules with one SX1281 and one LR1121 to give the best of both worlds? And yes, I know you couldn't do Gemini F1000, but you could do F1000. You could do K500, D500. Is there a reason I'm missing why you couldn't have dual chip, but one with a LR1121 and one with a... Because how many people really use Gemini on low band? I can't imagine that many people use Gemini on low band, because you need LR1121 to do Gemini on low band. If you really wanted to do it, you go 3 and you do SX1281, SX127, and an LR1121. But that might be going too far. Why bother? Would need dev work. And Wes has made the point. Why bother? We may as well just LR2021. Makes sense. Tick fucking talk. Again. What have those guys ever done for you and me? I don't know. Power! How dare you, Stu? How dare you accuse of 50 milliwatts and 2.4? How very... We want power. More power. You could be right, though. Yeah. How many people are flying 1 watt around the field in front of them with dynamic power turned off? Yes. I want 3 watts of RF power. I want my... No, okay. Yes. Are there any 1 watt Express LRS receivers? I'm sure there are. You can create one with a transmitter. You can basically turn a transmitter into a receiver and create one. But yes, it's good to see the devs are here. I hope they are well. Just been nice. It's been nice. There's been no drama. There's been no drama recently. The dev team have had a bit of a settled few months, and they deserve it after the shit they went through. Yes. GX15 is capable of 2 watts. No, don't mistake the option in the menu when you program it wrong or change the configuration for RF power. You can change the configuration on any radio to show you 2 watts. It doesn't mean it's doing 2 watts. I don't think the RF module in the TX15 can do 2 watts. The only module I recall that really could do more power is the Ranger. I'm sure there's a web. A web flasher for Express LRS, you say, Wes? Like this one? Yes, there is a web flasher. Now, is this the official Express LRS web flasher? Can someone just confirm? It is. There we go. Yeah, it can. Yep. So, you can flash a receiver. So, if we choose that, 2.4, that, click next. We Set the binding phrase and everything. Local download, serial UART, BetaFPV pass-through, or Wi-Fi. Needs a video made on this. I think I'm going to have to make one. I like that. Who knew? And you got backpack firmware on there as well. That's really cool. That's really, really cool. I might make a video about that tomorrow. That's cool. But yes, it's a nice radio. Genuinely, I actually really like it. I'm going to see if I can nick the module at the TX16S on it. I wonder if it'll fit. I wonder if it will fit. Get the module in it from the TX16S Mark III. It looks similar. It'll fit with a hammer, sir. Right. Predictions on Nick Boone's whoop. I have no idea. This Nick Boone's whoop was turned into a mythical creature. Nick set the internet on fire with his "don't spend money." It's unusual for Nick to be teasing us in stuff like this. I wonder if what he's up to. Some dodgy deals here with Nick Burns and his favourite whoop. Perhaps he's designed one himself, and what he's going to do is come out and go, "Ah ha ha! This was the best whoop because it is mine." Perhaps he's going to do that. He's got stock in the company. Yes, there's, it'll be the Nick 65. I like the name of that. Yes, there's. Trump Jr. is also on the board. Yeah, if anyone bought Red Cat stocks, lucky you. Unusual Machine stocks, lucky you. It's not being pumped at all. At some point, the Great Reset will come and we're all going to fucking pay for this one. Mark my words. You might make money today on those stocks. I hope you make enough, because we're all going to fucking pay for this one when it comes around. And it is coming, and there will be a correction. And oh God, is it going to be a bad one. Because when this lot falls, it'll be us who are paying again. Big style. And it ain't the banks this time. It's the entire IT and computer industry, data centers, energy industry. It's going to drag a lot of shit down with it this time. In some ways, there is an argument to be said, let's hope Trump gets in again or goes for another term, because at least he'll hold it off. Talk about pushing it into the long grass, but at least it might be long enough that it hurts me less later. If Trump does go, at some point this self-perpetuating wheel of Nvidia money is gonna fall apart. OpenAI will go under at some point. That's, I think, pretty inevitable, OpenAI going under. My money is that's almost a given. Anthropic, not so sure. I think the only reason I want Trump for one more term is it might delay the inevitable. Google will be fine. But I think at some point OpenAI is doomed. Did you see the losses? Because remember, the game for OpenAI is coming. They're about to try and make it all of your problem and my problem because they want to go public, which then means they sell all of the shares and that debt is all an us problem. And your pension funds and your stocks and your companies will feed into it, and then at some point the grenade will go off. I don't recommend what you invest in. I'm just giving you my personal opinion. I do not offer financial advice. But at some point the grenade will go off, and then we'll all be left holding the can. Same with Anthropic, yeah. Just like SpaceX. Why do you think Musk sold SpaceX, the went public? It was nothing to do with the fact that rocketry is the most expensive thing that exists and no one has been able to make money in it. And he hasn't just made all of that debt a you problem at all. It's nothing like that whatsoever. And that ain't gonna be what happens with OpenAI when everyone goes, oh yeah, invest in these great stocks. And then when everyone realizes that, oh fuck, how do we actually make money from this shit when everyone else is giving it away for free? There's open source models. And here's the real simple truth. And I was talking to friends about this the other day. They are trying to peddle AI as a service. They want AI to be like your internet broadband connection, your telephone line, your mobile service, your TV service. They want to go, you will need this in your life because you wouldn't not want to have it in your life. But the question is, who is really going to pay a monthly subscription to have AI unless they force you to do it? Unless they get their software integrated into all of your hardware where you don't have a choice. And that's what the plan is, because who else is going to fucking pay for it? Because you ain't paying as you need it. And that's what they want to do. They want to sell AI and compute as a service. And the game will be, no, you won't buy laptops anymore. Your phone, as part of your monthly subscription, there'll be an AI subscription on top. So you'll pay, I don't know, your $40 to your cell provider. And then you'll pay your $3 to AI. And whilst it is like that, for certain people, and Wes is right, I paid for Anthropic Pro. There are absolutely people like me, you, developers, with the benefit is real, but the benefit isn't real for the consumers. And that's the problem. And Google will fuck all the others over by going, we'll make it free and monetize it through ads. And in the end, the proven model, in the end, is people would rather have it for free for ads than pay for it monthly, on average. Not everyone, but on average. But yeah, look, I pay for it, but we are the minority. How would you get your mum to pay for it is the simple answer. What reason would your mum to have to pay for it? Are they expecting us all to have about 60 agents in our home? There's an agent monitoring our central heating system and making sure that we're kept warm and it's optimizing it to save us the most money. Is there going to be an agent to manage your emails so you don't have to do? Is there going to be an agent that deals with people knocking on your door and decides if it needs to warn you, if it's spam, if it's this? You know, the theory is they want to sell us all fucking agents to run our lives. You know, whether you'll be able to buy computers in 5 years is another problem. How long, you know, and especially with the US government having a lot of sort of ties into Intel, there is a very real risk with Intel as well. That you could have a real scale back on personal compute. And then you then shift the compute off to the cloud. So instead of your smartphone being really powerful, it then offloads everything to the cloud through AI, and then you're forced to pay for it. Apple Intelligence blocking spam calls is amazing. Yeah, look, there's some good stuff. But the problem is, are you going to pay for it? And are there going to be enough people to pay for it before OpenAI run out of money? And that's the big problem. Is there going to be enough money to people to pay for it? And I actually think Anthropic have done a much better job than OpenAI. They need the revenues from the normies. They have to have the revenues from the normies. The revenues from the industry insiders, the developers, those of us who understand it is not enough. We don't pay the bills. And then it's when they make it, you know, hardware as a service, your product as a service. Because if they don't monetize it in the next 12 months, they're in the shit. Especially when now the books are starting to leak out. You suddenly go, you know, they are burning an ever pile of money. But remember, the company selling axes is fine. The company selling the axes, remember the gold rush. Yeah, I agree, Wes. Anthropic have really come out well in all of this. I tell you something interesting. Where the real problem is where everyday business sees the benefit in AI. And here's the problem. And I see this on a daily basis. For people like me, AI is great. But if you walk into the average office and you try to find how AI can improve that company, the truth is it's 10 years off being ready. It can't replace a secretary. It can't replace a person answering the phone. It can't replace the person behind the counter. It can improve their daily lives and in many ways improve their productivity, but that productivity boost does not outweigh the cost of implementation. And that's the problem. You know, if you write a letter and you want to make sure it's worded correctly for business purposes, you can throw it through GPT, Copilot, Anthropic, and it does a great job. If you need a quick bit of legal advice, it does a great job. If you need, you know, to the people, it gives you amazing power from a legal perspective. I know a guy that's basically suing a company all through AI. He doesn't need a lawyer, solicitor. He's doing it all through AI. Is it perfect? No. But the fucking shit it's pulling up, you know, he's plowing in thousands of documents and it's trawling through and finding stuff that most humans would never find. There are elements of it that are incredible. But in the end, how do you as an average business benefit from AI? And that's the problem no one has solved today. Tech industry, brilliant. But outside of the tech industry, go to your traditional industries. How does AI benefit the average office worker on a daily basis, other than convenience and making their life a little bit easier? And whilst that is a benefit, it doesn't really show in productivity improvement. And in the end, productivity improvement needs to lead to more revenue, more income for the business. And if that doesn't happen, then businesses will not invest in AI. And that is what you're already seeing. If you are a wine selling company with 100 staff, your guys who are on the forklifts have still got to be on the forklifts. Your guys on the lorries have still got to be on the lorries. The girls in the office who are doing salary wages, girls and boys in the office doing salary wages, customer service queries, it will absolutely improve their lives, but it won't mean you don't need them. And that's the problem for that business. And this is the problem. How do you bring it to the average company? That's the problem. And that's and that's the problem for consumers. What will happen to consumers is you will be forced into it by hardware manufacturers integrating the services into their products, meaning that you end up having to pay the subscription. That's what will happen with consumers. You'll be forced into it. You will buy a fridge that has AI built in that you need to pay a monthly subscription after the first year. A great example of that is my car. My car came with 12 months connection to the network of the manufacturer to allow me to control it on my phone. So it gave me a year of being able to sort of turn my air conditioning on and off remotely, heat the car remotely, defrost the windows remotely. A year later, that runs out. And then it's like £120 a year if I want that functionality back. That's how they're going to sell it to you for the consumer. You're going to be gatekeeped into having this, forced into it as part of features of a new product that they get you on for a period of time and then want you to retain because you've got used to it. You know, I want to be able to get status updates. I think there are industries that are in real trouble, though. You know, if you think about things like developers, solicitors, lawyers, it's going to cause some problems in those industries. And I'm not saying solicitors, lawyers, developers are not better than AI, but the problem is dickheads like me can go online and use it to do pretty much most of what I need. You know, if I wanted to write a will for a reason and I was unsure before, in the end, I might say I better get legal advice. I am now absolutely going to go on to fucking ChatGPT or one of them and go, tell me about this. How can I do this? And take its advice. And that advice will probably be enough for me not to require that legal intervention. Now, I'm not saying actually not get that legal intervention. Doesn't mean I didn't need that legal intervention, but it will allow me to step forward without getting it. There are certain industries it's going to hurt. Legal industry, I think it's really going to hurt. Whereas before, anything legal, you really had to get people involved. It's really good at that shit. Developers, people who need simple apps, simple programs to do stuff, it'll do it for you. It'll take jobs that way. But in the end, it helps that the cost of my legal help was considerably cheaper because I did most of the footwork. Yeah. So this is where it'll hit. But again, I still come back to how the average business benefits. I think they'll fuck consumers over. I think we're fucked. From a consumer perspective, you're gonna have to fight really hard to not buy a product with some form of AI baked in that requires a subscription at some point. When you need a TV, a fridge, a kettle, a toaster, fucking toiletry, a pack of bog roll, there's at some point going to be a point where you're going to have to really look. It's going to almost become the same as the mobile phone industry did around having the slop on the phones. You know, you have to really look at some phones that don't include all the shit that the others give you, you know. Consumers are screwed. You still have poop in your asshole. Would you like to buy more credits? I think they'll get consumers just by forcing. You'll just get people that way, and that's been happening. Have I seen BMW running ads on Startup? No. No, I haven't. Right, guys, that's it. Look after yourselves. Stay safe. We will not be here next week. I am having a week out. There will be no live stream next Sunday night. So sorry about that. However, we will be back the week after. So look after yourselves. Stay safe. And I will speak to you soon.